There's no denying the extraordinary success of Amazon Prime's Fallout earlier last year. The show had over 65 million viewers in the first 16 days of its availability, and has since surpassed over 100 million viewers, making it the second most watched Prime Video series ever. And on top of that, it received 17 Emmy nominations, including Outstanding Drama Series, and won the Game Award for Best Adaptation just the other day. This show, then, is clearly a massive hit. But what was it that catapulted this show to success? Having watched the show twice, as well as carrying out a fair bit of research on how this show was made, this video aims to answer that question. So then, let's begin.
Okie dokie.
There are a number of key factors that I've boiled down to being the key elements of what made this show great, and I'll break down this video into chapters should anyone want to skip ahead to certain bits. But in order, these key elements are tone, story, production design, and creative filmmaking practices involved in the making of the show. And I believe that it's these key elements together which created a show worthy of its level of success. One of the more unique elements of Fallout is the show's tone. I describe the genre of Fallout as a combination of the Western, science fiction, and even elements of fantasy thrown in there as well, particularly through the adventure narrative style which Lucy's storyline adopts, but more on that in the next chapter. These three genres can, and have, all been explored in various tones, everything from dark and gritty stories to satirical, comedic ones, and putting these three genres together into one cohesive story is no easy task. This show could have very easily devolved into being too convoluted or messy for it to really work, and I think tone plays a very significant role in why it does work. The world of the show is a chaotic place, both literally, but also through the wild combination of elements that this story has. Here we have a story where a zombie cowboy, Iron Man, and a Girl Scout all coexist and interact with one another. It's so conceptually out there that in order for it to be grounded in some way to reality, the best way to do this is through the show's tone. The show is very frequently ironic, and it's this ironic tone which points out the ludicrousness of its concepts. Its own self-referentiality and ability to poke fun at itself gives this show a charismatic quality to it, but it never goes too far. It always strikes the balance perfectly. The writing never undermines the more serious moments of this story. It's one of my many frustrations with modern Marvel writing, is that it never allows the serious moments to sit with the audience without being undermined with some quip to interject humour into the moment. With Fallout, the serious moments are allowed to stay serious. Take the final episode, for example, the whole scene where Lucy learns the truth. The writing never once tries to undermine this huge emotional moment for the character. In fact, in all the pivotal moments of her character's character arc, it never undermines them with irony. What this does then is ensure that the show has some emotional weight behind it, because whilst the tone can be comedic and enjoyable to watch, it can also be darker and more tragic. And it's this combination which helps make this show such a compelling watch, because it encompasses the whole spectrum of human emotions in a single story. This balancing of ironic and serious tones is actually reflected in how sound is used in this show. Sound design is a particularly well deployed element used in Fallout, with it being a way of distinguishing juxtapositions in the story. In the case of the music, the use of the upbeat 1950s songs are used in the show's more ironic moments, whereas the score, which was composed by the legendary Ramin Djawadi,
Ramin Djawadi.
Okie dokie.
who's behind a great number of iconic scores from Game of Thrones to Iron Man. Score is what's used in the show's serious moments. This clear audio distinction between these two styles of music mirrors the two styles of tone which this story encompasses, and it acts as a small but key element which subconsciously primes the audience into how they should be feeling when watching a scene. It's genius stuff. We've touched a little bit already on the story, but there's a lot more we can say about it. I recently watched Quentin Tarantino on the Joe Rogan show, explaining why he prefers film over television, and what for him makes an amazing television series.
What's the difference between television and a good movie? Because a lot of the TV now has the patina of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they're using cinematic language, all right, to get you caught up in it, and obviously I'm talking about good shows. We're talking about shows that you're
Ozark.
We're talking shows that you're compelled to watch.
Right.
While I'm watching it, I am compelled. I'm caught up in it. But at the end of the day, it's all just a soap opera. They've introduced you to a bunch of characters. You actually kind of know all their backstories. You know everybody's connection with everybody else, and they spend some time selling that out. And then everything else, is just the compellingness of the soap opera,
Right.
of what's happening to
And
this
what's
character.
different between that and a film?
Well, I'll tell you, because the thing is, if you watch Edge of Night Monday through Friday, you get caught up in the dramas of the family and everything.
Right.
But you don't remember it 5 years from now. You're caught up into the minutia of it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the difference between is I'll see a good Western movie and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I'll remember the story. I'll remember this scene or that scene, and it built to an emotional climax of some degree. And the story is good. It's not just about the interpersonal relationships. The story is good itself, but there's a payoff to it. But there's not a payoff on this stuff. It's just more interconnectional drama, and while I'm watching it, that's good enough. When the season's over, I need to walk away with more than just the soap opera.
An impactful moment.
Exactly. Now, I don't expect you to do that every week, but at the end of the arc, if you're telling a continuing story, at the end of that fucking season, you need to, bam, drop the mic.
Yeah.
You need to tell me a fucking story, not just ...
This got me thinking about what shows adopt a movie-like structure in their writing, and Fallout was one of the ones that sprang to mind. Now yes, Fallout is not a limited series, having been renewed for and is already in production of a Series 2, and will likely have further subsequent seasons in the future, and even though the ending leaves elements open, with Lucy wanting vengeance against her father and the Ghoul wanting to find his wife and child, leading to them teaming up, really, the story of Season 1 is fully concluded. The basic structure of Lucy McLean's storyline follows the adventure novel archetype. Lucy, the protagonist, is on an epic journey, stepping outside of her comfort zone of the Vault, and through this process develops and grows as a character, with her perspective on reality shifting with the more of reality that she gets to see. By the end of the first season, all of these things have occurred. She starts out on a quest to find her father, who's been kidnapped by Moldava, and upon finding him, we have that brilliant twist that he's really been the villain hiding in plain sight. That reveal sequence, where the whole show's storylines converge into one cohesive, powerful moment, has been my personal favourite TV and film experience of 2024. I was so immersed and hooked into the story at this moment, and astounded by how well the show is written. Everything ties together so brilliantly, and going back to what Tarantino said about setting up these sorts of moments, this show does it brilliantly. Throughout the show, the answers as to what really happened in the past were hiding in plain sight, but it's only by the end that we realise how it all connects. Not only is the main storyline of Lucy compelling to watch, so too are the plots of the supporting characters. Maximus's plot is a clever inversion of the knight in shining armour trope. Conventionally, with knights in literature, they're presented as virtuous and honourable men, which is what leads them to being given the honour of being a knight. In Fallout, the Knights of the Brotherhood of Steel are far from honourable men. The Brotherhood of Steel is riddled with dishonour, betrayal, and selfishness, and Maximus starts out this way too, very much a product of the environment he's been raised in. His theft of the T-60 armour following his negligent homicide of Knight Titus, and his pretending to be Titus present him as a figure who's unafraid of being dishonourable and deceitful. But it's through meeting Lucy that Maximus begins to change. A purity of heart inspires him to be better, so rather than earning the armour by being virtuous, it's through having the armour that he becomes virtuous, because it's what enables him to help Lucy. But even when that armour is taken away from him, he remains a changed and better man. The scene that proves this is when he listens to Lucy and abandons the armour and gives back the power core of Vault 4. Through Lucy, Maximus grows from being a man who didn't deserve the armour to a man who's better than it. And it's another great character arc that this show has to offer. And last, but certainly not least, we have my favourite character from the show, the Ghoul. aka Cooper Howard. Walton Goggins does such a phenomenal job at portraying both points in time which this character occupies in the story. He's effortlessly cool and powerful as the Ghoul, and deeply likeable as Cooper Howard. The Cooper Howard plot showcases to the viewer how his persona slowly transforms into the Ghoul. He's a figure that really sees the worst humanity has to offer, especially with the twist at the end of what his wife was a part of at Vault-Tec.
There's a lot of earning potential with the end of the world, but we're talking about making a significant investment based on a hypothetical. How can you guarantee results?
By dropping the bomb ourselves. Mr. Howard?
The Ghoul is the logical answer of how to be in a dog-eat-dog post-nuclear apocalypse surface world. It's a logical endpoint of what you become when you see the worst in humanity. And I really like how they maintain his character trait and coolness throughout the show. He's unapologetically bad, and the writing is equally unapologetic about that fact too. He's a compelling figure who straddles the line between anti-hero and just flat-out villain, and it makes logical sense that he stays that way throughout. And it's these sequences from the past, in which he's Cooper Howard, which demonstrate to the audience that this was once a man with great capacity for good, kindness, and ultimately has a great deal of humanity. And we see how that's slowly stripped away from him. And what's left unshown, the gap between those events and the present ones, is clearly suggested by Lucy and Maximus's experiences of other people on the surface. The Ghoul is a superb character, and for me personally, every single scene with him in was a delight to watch from start to finish. It's one of the key elements of what I believe made this show so enjoyable. One of the more interesting things I learned about the making of this show is that the creator of the Fallout video game series, Todd Howard, had refused various offers to adapt the series into either a film or show in the past, but he did accept this offer. When you create something, unless you're prepared to sell out, which many people do, you want to hold on to it. Only giving the creative rights to someone you trust will do a decent job of protecting the legacy of that franchise. Clearly for Todd Howard, it was Jonathan Nolan, brother of Chris and the executive producer and director of 3 episodes of the series, that he considered the man right for the job. Jonathan Nolan has quite the reputation of skill within the industry, having written the screenplay for The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, and Interstellar, alongside Christopher Nolan. And he also wrote the original short story, Memento Mori, which Christopher Nolan's film Memento would be based off. He's also an executive producer on Westworld, just to name some of his other work. Jonathan Nolan and the whole cast and crew did a phenomenal job at bringing this story to life. In terms of this show's production, Nolan employed the concept of what he terms maximalism in his approach of making the show. In other words, he basically means throw everything at the show to make it work, so using both practical and CG effects, shooting on location where possible, and they also used many different types of creative filmmaking techniques in order to create the final product, and I definitely think that it really shows and ups the quality of the show. With set design, most of the sets were in fact real. They built a multi-story vault set, practically, to shoot the scenes that take place in the vault. This may not seem like that surprising of a thing to mention, but in modern filmmaking, where CGI backgrounds and volume technology has come to dominate, it shows a level of dedication that exceeds the average standard of today. Moreover, practical sets always feel more real and believable, as they're not simulating depth, but do actually have depth to them because they are 3D spaces.
There's a multi-story vault that's been built. I lost my way to this room. Just being able to walk through it, and it's everything, it's all, there's reports here. There's a letter from Vault-Tec right here, and I can flip through and they have charts of how are we raising the it's insanity.
This desire to give depth and texture to this world not only came through the sets, but also through the costume designs too. The Vault-Tec suits were made of multiple different types of fabric to ensure that they didn't come across as flat or unbelievable on screen. To my surprise, even the T-60 power armor was made practically, with the team at Legacy Effects bringing the suits to life and impressively making them light enough for stunt performers to wear and move around in. Where VFX were used, they were used as a tool of extension rather than the primary way of creating something. They ensured that there was always something real in the frame, and even for the few occasions that they did utilize the volume technology, it was used using real footage captured by helicopters that could then be placed as a backdrop for the ships when flying, as those for practical reasons had to be set rather than actual aircraft. They also shot the whole show on 35mm film rather than using digital cameras, which is an increasingly rare filmmaking technique these days, but it definitely creates a different feel and look to the show's cinematography compared to digital photography.
To get back to shooting film is a great pleasure and great joy. It's very kind to the human face in the way that digital photography does not yet seem to be capable of doing.
And one that feels more like a classic Hollywood epic film, and I think that adds to the aesthetic of this story. The point I'm trying to make here is that by throwing everything filmmaking has to offer at this show's approach, it's able to be made in the best way it possibly can be, leading to the best possible product that they could possibly make. And when you have a production that's willing to go that far, willing to pull out all the stops and give 110%, what you create is something pretty damn magical. So it's no wonder then that audiences became as enchanted as they did with Fallout. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video and looking for more reviews, breakdowns and discussion videos on movies and shows, please like and subscribe if you'd like to. Thank you.